So let's talk about something you've probably heard about Islam, the four wives thing, right? It's one of those ideas that everyone seems to know, but it's also, let's be honest, one of the most misunderstood. Today, we're going to dig into the sources and really unpack the history, the actual rules, and the why behind it all. All right, let's just get right into it. The big question: can a Muslim man have four wives? Is that just a rule? A free-for-all? Or is there, a lot more to the story? Well, as we're about to see from the source material, it is way more complex than just a simple number. Now, check this out. This is where it gets really interesting. Despite what you might think, the sources show that in most Muslim-majority countries, fewer than 2%, that's right, less than 2% of men are actually in polygamous marriages. So clearly, there's a huge disconnect between the permission and the practice. What is going on here? Okay, so to figure this out, we've got to go right to the source. Let's look at the rule and, maybe even more importantly, the conditions that come with it. Okay, so here it is. This is the verse we're talking about from the Qur'an, and you can see it right there. It says, marry 2 or 3 or 4. But, and this is a huge but, look at what comes immediately after. But if you fear that you will not be just, then marry only 1. See? The condition isn't an afterthought. It's literally part of the same sentence. They are completely inseparable. And that brings us right to the core of this whole thing, this idea of justice. The sources make it super clear that this isn't just about, buying them both the same car. We're talking about absolute equality in everything: your money, your time, your attention, even your feelings. And get this, other parts of the text basically say that's a standard that is nearly impossible for any human being to actually meet. So you might be asking, why even have the rule if the condition is impossible? That's a great question. And to answer it, the sources tell us we need to do a little historical reframing. We need to look at what was happening before this rule came along. And this is the crucial point. The sources don't present this rule as an invention of polygamy, but as a massive restriction on it. Think about it. Before this, in that part of the world, there was literally no limit. A man could have as many wives as he wanted, and those women often had zero legal rights. So what Islam did was step in and say, whoa, hold on, the limit is now 4. And, like we just saw, it comes with this incredibly strict condition of justice. And listen, this wasn't just something happening in Arabia. The sources point out this was pretty much the norm across the board in the ancient world. You look at ancient Judaism, figures like King Solomon, who the texts say had 700 wives. 700! Or King David. In ancient Hinduism, kings and nobles often had huge numbers of wives. This was the global backdrop. It was a world of essentially unlimited polygamy. Okay, so this brings us back to that big question. If the bar for justice is almost impossible to reach, why allow it at all? Why not just say one and done? Well, according to the sources, the reason is that it was designed to be a system of protection. It was basically meant to be a social safety net. You have to remember, this was a time of constant conflict and war. That meant there were huge numbers of widows and orphans who had absolutely no one to support them. So this system was a way to bring those vulnerable women into a legally recognized, accountable family structure. It gave them a home, it gave them security, and it prevented them from falling into much worse situations like prostitution or exploitation. And it's really important to stress this. The sources consistently present monogamy as the ideal. They point to the example of the Prophet of Islam himself. He was in a monogamous marriage for 25 years until his first wife passed away. It was only after her death that he entered into other marriages, and many of those, according to the texts, were for the very social and protective reasons we just talked about. All right, let's pull all this together. What's the big takeaway from all the material we've just gone through? So, if you look at it this way, the core idea from the sources is this. The rule wasn't about starting something, it was about stopping something. It was a dramatic reduction. It took a world where you could have hundreds of wives, literally unlimited, and slammed on the brakes, capping it at a maximum of 4. And then it attached that nearly impossible condition of perfect justice on top of it all. Which leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. Is this an outdated rule for a specific time and place? Or is it a timeless social solution? Something meant for very specific, very exceptional circumstances to protect the vulnerable. The sources lay out the arguments, and now you've got the context to really think about that question for yourself.